Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast in which Craig Touch and myself, Roland Hume, chat some of the interesting figures and leading lights of this crazy industry of writing and publishing. And today I am very excited to welcome a very special guest, Sandy Malone, who is an author and a recovering wedding planner with a very storied life. Sandy, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing today?
I'm having a fantastic time. The sun is out. I live on Jekyll Island, Georgia, and summer is here. It's absolutely beautiful.
Oh, Jekyll Island. What a great name.
It is. It's super neat. It is very, very historic. It was an island that was owned by the millionaires of the Gilded Age. And the Rockefellers and the Astors and the Goodyears, and I mean, you can just keep going, would come down here to spend their winters at what they considered their Jekyll Island Club hunting resort. And it wasn't until World War II, when they were blowing up merchant ships right off the coast, that all the millionaires had to be evacuated because 1/6 of the world's wealth was gathered here.
Wow.
And after World War II, the governor of Georgia handed them a check and said, "Hey, we just took your whole island by eminent domain. See ya." We became a state park, and there are only 35% of the island can ever be developed, and we are one of the lucky homeowners here, my husband and I.
That's wonderful. It's nice to hear eminent domain being used on millionaires instead of the rest of us.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Well, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep interrupting, but I was going to say, I was going to quickly bring Craig into this because we wouldn't be here without the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and an author himself. Craig, come and join us. We're talking about blowing up merchant ships and eminent domain.
Yeah, listen, it's all fun stuff, right? and great fodder for books. But really, I mean, the best fodder is the fact that you were working on that. You've been a wedding planner for a long time, and there was a whole TLC show based around you. The what was it called? The Wedding Planner?
No, Wedding Island.
Wedding Island. That's right.
And I'm always clear with people. Nothing to do with Love Island.
Right, or Temptation Island, or
no. I believe we were the first island. I believe of the show.
You were the first island. So that's great. So you were the in-house wedding planner for all the shows.
Well, here's the deal. There was a little bitty island called Vieques. So there is. It's off the coast of Puerto Rico, about 7 miles. And when I was working in public affairs and government affairs, the government of Puerto Rico was a client. And so I would fly in and out of there all the time. And we worked to kick the U.S. Navy off of this little island because they used to practice bombing there. And when it stopped being a client, I bought a vacation house there. Actually, first I started vacationing there. I should say it that way. My husband and I, or my boyfriend at the time, fell in love with it and kept going back on vacation. And then we got married there. And it was a nightmare because there was no wedding planner. We were on an island 7 miles off the coast of another island. All of our guests had a great time. I did not have a great time. It was not fun. A lot of work. And but I planned tons of events for friends and family and weddings up in the States. Puerto Rico was another animal. And when my husband retired from the police department, he was a SWAT commander, and he made it to 30 years without shooting anybody or anybody shooting him. And it was time to retire. And we said, what are we going to do next? And we decided to move to the home we'd bought on Vieques Island, and we opened up a wedding planning company. And the goal was 2 weddings a month. We thought 2 weddings a month would be a measure of success. We had 19 weddings the first August. Wow. It was crazy. My husband never got to retire. I mean, he thought he would just help me with weddings, but we were in a place where there's no linen rental company. There's no lighting company. You have to hire people and set everything up and take everything down yourself. So my husband, we mostly hired off-duty cops. They're all terribly underpaid down there and great guys. And we're part of the police family. So we mostly hired off-duty cops, and they worked on the setups and teardowns on the weekends with us. But it was some crazy. I mean, we planned more than 500 weddings. And in the midst of all of that, a friend of mine's husband was a producer, and he kept hearing the stories. And it was kind of like he couldn't believe it. And he said, we need to come shoot a demo. This could be a reality show. And I'm just thinking, it's my life. Trust me, it is a reality show every day. And they said, it's going to take a year because we're doing this on spec, right? So we're going to come down, we'll randomly shoot it. Send us a list of your upcoming weddings, a couple bullet points of what's interesting. I get a phone call, I don't know, a couple hours later saying like, oh, do you really have a Russian bride on the north side of the island at 5 p.m. and gay military police in uniform on the south side of the island an hour later? I said, yes. Like, oh, I'm on my way.
I'd watch that show.
Yeah, well, this was the demo, and they kept worrying, will anything go wrong? Because I'm working so hard to make sure nothing does go wrong. I'm fighting what they want. And they learned things go wrong.
So they wanted things to go wrong? Is that what you mean?
Oh, yeah. They wanted things to go wrong because that's what creates drama. And I kept trying, once we were making the show, I kept trying to explain to production, you don't have to add anything. Okay. Like our show was pretty much unscripted. There were a couple little things production insisted on. We brought in a helicopter to take somebody to their wedding. They made the bride ask for it. She didn't want that. It was dumb. It actually just made my entire day very, very difficult. Things went wrong with all these weddings because that's natural. Every wedding, something goes wrong either on the vendor side or on the wedding guest, wedding party side. And my goal as a wedding planner is if it happened on the vendor side, you never knew about it. You know, we've done like midnight runs to the big island to buy the right shaped table when they didn't make it back from another island. You know, my goal is to make sure you don't know what went wrong. If it goes wrong on the wedding side, that's a whole nother ball of wax, and it makes for interesting weddings. I mean, when we were filming the TV show, they added an ice sculpture to one of the weddings. Such drama because you cannot make an ice sculpture on Vieques Island. The water is not the right water. And I knew this. I'd been planning weddings there 10 years. So I told them that. No, they made me go talk to the ice guy in Spanish, get him to re-explain to me like I was an idiot because I haven't been there 10 years. I don't already know what. I would have done an ice sculpture if it was doable. Anyway, they made us order one from the Big Island. That wedding, the mother of the bride had to be medevaced not once, twice off the island. And she kept checking out of the hospital against medical advice and catching ferries back. We did not need an ice sculpture. In fact, they didn't even show some of the crazy.
Those two things were unrelated, I assume.
Right.
She wasn't like being medevac because of the stress from the ice sculpture.
No, I should have been. But no, she was just nuts. She had a bleeding ulcer. And she was a surgical nurse. So it was crazy. I mean, they took her over and they put clamps on her and her gut was bleeding and they wanted to do surgery. And she walked out of the hospital, got on a ferry boat back to an island that has no hospital.
That's wow. Well, that's the poor person, poor man who ended up with her as a mother-in-law.
I swear. Oh my goodness. You know what? I don't trash individual clients, so I'm not going down that road because the bride and groom were two of the nicest people I've ever met. But I was not sad to say goodbye to that mother of the bride. I was glad to say goodbye to her with her upright on her feet and alive.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a stressful weekend. So, but my point is, something goes wrong at every wedding. And if you went to a wedding that was absolutely perfect, what that means is that whatever went wrong was handled right.
Right.
That doesn't mean nothing went wrong.
And I mean, okay, so that's sort of like sets the stage as to what we wanted to sort of discuss today, which was that whole idea of, you know, pulling the stories from real life things and what you need to do or not do to them. And in some cases, I think it's almost like the crazy stuff happens and it's almost too crazy. Like, I mean, if you were to write about it and people thought it was complete fiction, they wouldn't really believe it. Sometimes you almost need people to realize, hey, oh, this was based on a true story. Because otherwise it'd be like, yeah, that would never happen. This is too unbelievable. We're not reading fantasy here, right? But there's often those times where, you know, something happens, but then there's also the other way where you might need, like your production company, you might need to spruce things up a bit, but you still want to be credible. You still want, you know, your story to seem realistic, and so sometimes that's a fine line.
Well, for me, it was for writing the book. I did not want any of the brides to be recognizable. Now, some of them are recognizable to themselves, but they're brides that I adore who know they're in the books, who are excited that it's a compliment. The ones that I'm making fun of in a less than flattering way, I have done my best to disguise them. I had one bride who was so horrible. Okay. Bride and groom, they were horrible. They were probably the worst couple I dealt with in 11 years of wedding planning collectively. It's not that they had one particular thing that was so well, they did, but they had so many bad things. So when I went to write about this couple, I could not, because they were not believable as a couple. I had to break it down. And in my books, this particular couple is 4 completely separate different couples.
Oh, because they got so many issues. You had to divide them into.
They were so hideous. No, you just wouldn't have believed it. You'd have been like, Jesus, Sandy, go ahead. And like, no, that's all made up. Nobody would have done that. The funniest thing is I got flowers out of the blue from this bride. I can't remember if it was, I think it was when book 4 came out. And she's like, so excited, loving your series, you know, gosh, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I hadn't heard from her in years. They are not married anymore. And I'm still good friends with their photogs. And and who live in the same city, so I'm able to keep tabs. But not that I want to, except to make sure I keep a safe distance. But yeah, she didn't recognize herself. She sent me flowers. Now I wanted
funny.
Well, I wanted to be like, honey, how many brides do you think called me at midnight to drive across the island to rub aloe on their sunburn?
Oh my God. And you did that?
Yeah. And in 11 years, I did it once. That was you. It's in the book. Like, how do you not recognize yourself, you crazy woman? Anyway.
The customer is always right. I mean, like, to me, there's certain things where you'd be like, yeah, you're gonna have to. I mean, that's not really part of my job, so move along. But that's why I'm not a famous,
but this is the thing that was so crazy about it. And it's funny because I can't remember if I wrote this into the book. This is really what happened, and I don't remember if this is how it's written. But the groom called me and said, she has sunburn. Come do this. I was like, does she not have a bridesmaid? Like,
or why can't he do it?
I know.
They weren't going to break tradition
by
seeing each other the night before. Look, let's talk about breaking tradition. This couple was he was gay and she was in her 40s and an attorney, and she had to know what she was signing up for. True story, same couple. We finally survived. I mean, it's 4 different brides in the books. We finally survived this wedding week from hell. They get married. The wedding was the craziest thing you've ever seen, in that the bride was just insane. First off, she went down the aisle like 45 minutes late because we could not get her dress to zip.
Ooh.
No, here you go. It's funny to do this with 2 guys as hosts, but.
And you'd looped her up with suntan lotion, with aloe vera.
But that was the night before. There I was at midnight, and she answered the door naked to her hotel. She'd been doing that all week, so I didn't think she was coming on to me. I knew that she'd been doing it all week because we were in on the Blue Horizon, this beautiful boutique hotel. It's still there on Vieques, Puerto Rico. And the general manager, Myra, had contacted me and said, Sandy, you got to tell the bride to stop answering the door to her room naked, because the guys on our hotel staff are not comfortable. They're not willing to go to the door anymore. And I'm like, oh, come on. Why are we doing this? Like, she didn't even have good boobs. Okay. It wasn't like it was a good thing. I did not understand this chick at all. But on the wedding night, when we're finally, by the time you get to the first dance, you're like, they're married, dinner's over. Like, most of them are drunk. They just need to dance. It's almost over. Right. No. This woman flipped out. The groom stepped on her toe while they were doing their rehearsed dance. She got mad. She yelled at him in the middle of the dance floor and then stomped off the dance floor during her first dance.
Yikes.
Can't make this up. And then she locked him out of their room later that night. She didn't want him to go to the after hours they had prepaid for. And all their guests are having a great time. And he went out and had a great time with them. But she wouldn't let him in the room. And security found him asleep between 2 cars on the ground in the gravel parking lot. So they took him back to his room at like 4:30 in the morning, knock on the door. She didn't answer. I think she came to the door eventually, whatever. They let him in. She let him in. He gets in bed with her, and then he wets the bed on her.
Oh.
He flips out, and I get a phone call close to 5 in the morning from Myra, the GM, going, all right, so your bride and groom are naked and beating the crud out of each other on the front porch of that of their room. Do you want me to call the police, or are you going to come handle this? I was like, you're kidding. I mean, you have to understand that my life would be worse if they got arrested, because we don't have a courthouse on Vieques. They have to take you to another island for your arraignment and everything else. I mean, it would make my life a living hell. Not really my problem, except, not going to get a good wedding wire review.
Yeah.
If your clients end up in jail. Yeah, no, that was crazy pants. We went over there. By the time we got to the hotel, it was the other side of the island, 15 minutes. By the time we got dressed and got to the other side of the island, some of their wedding guests had intervened, and they were both wearing bathrobes and had been separated. They weren't beating on each other anymore.
Marriage is going great.
Yeah. So they ended up.
Weird, they're not together.
They ended up telling me not to file the marriage license paperwork. That's fine. You're not married then. I mean, it's a bunch of words unless you filed the paperwork.
Yeah.
And he left the island that day with his sister and her wife and their kids. And they went over, and she was waiting the next day, was going to fly home with some of their wedding guests and then go rebuild her life, I guess, or start over or whatever. She was an attorney in her 40s. I mean, she wasn't some little kid. And they both ditched their friends and family somehow in the airport, reunited, and caught a flight to Tortuga and went and honeymooned and didn't tell anybody.
Oh.
So I'm getting these hysterical phone calls from the bride's mother, who's like in Ohio, who is like, my daughter never got home. Like, what happened? And they were supposed to honeymoon in Dubai. And that morning that I came over to break up the fight, I was like, I don't think you want to go to Dubai. You don't want to go somewhere that you're allowed to hit your wife when you're coming off of something quite like this. Is this really the safest, best decision? And so they didn't go to Dubai. They went to Tortuga, and they didn't tell anybody. And the whole thing became just chaotic. It lasted for a week, with them messaging me being like, file the paperwork. And me being like, yeah, I'm going to need to hear from both of you and make sure you're both alive before I do that. You can't make these things up.
It seems like it would be hard to make some of these into a romantic comedy, because isn't that your series is romantic comedy, right? So I can see the comedy for sure, but where's some of these, there's not a lot of romance.
Well, it's rom-com. It's not so much romance, although the whole story arc. Okay, let me explain my books. So my books are based on my life experience. I mean, we ran our company for 11 years in Vieques, and we lost everything in one night in Hurricane Maria.
Ooh.
And and we were really lucky because we had a condo back in DC. A lot of people didn't have a second house option. I mean, our house in Vieques was just fine. It was concrete, didn't even leak during the hurricane. But Vieques Island, the hospital, was flattened. And they didn't get power back for 17 months.
17 months.
17 months. We went back something like 10, 12 months after the storm to meet movers because we emptied out what hadn't been looted at our house to put the house on the market. And we were still on generators at that point because it was just, we couldn't have restarted the business. And we were glad we didn't try to, because lo and behold, 2020 came along. And, when the whole world stopped, Vieques actually, for a while there, you had to live there to get on and off the island. So I would have had to, I cried with every bride whose wedding I canceled. I had 2 years of weddings booked, and I cried with every client as we canceled. I cannot imagine having gone through that again a couple of years later.
No.
Wow.
It would have been
that would have been.
So I went back to writing full time at that point, because I started out as a journalist and a political reporter. I went back to writing full time. I became editor of Blue Lives Matter and the Police Tribune, at the time nation's largest police publication. And I had my husband, who was like my cop Wikipedia on the couch, which was helpful. And like I said, I went back to writing full time, but I've always wanted to write fiction. I just never had, because I had to write what I was being paid to write. And people are like, why didn't you just start writing a book? Because I had 4 more freelance assignments sitting there. You can only do so much in a day. And I finally made the big decision when we moved to Jekyll Island, which is just north of Florida. My mom was living in Jacksonville, and she'd been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And we knew we needed to be closer to her. And so we moved down here. And the story started to form in my head. Like, what if it was about a young wedding planner who lost her job in the Caribbean and had to start over home where she grew up on Jekyll Island?
Which is you.
Yeah. But Tally Davis, my main character, she's not me. She is all the girls who ever worked for me.
I love that.
Yeah. And there's parts of me that's in there, but if I'm anything, I'm Isabel, who was her boss and mentor back on Vieques. But that's also lots of wedding planner people. It's all the best of everybody. And so in the book, she has to come first. She has to get evacuated. And I always encourage people that enjoy the first book, go watch the TV show, because it still streams on all the Discoveries and Tubi and what have you, Wedding Island, because you'll see it's not a joke. Like, you really do have to stop for copulating horses in the intersection there. You really do. You're dealing in a place where you're on an island off the coast of another island that's functioning on island time. And so it's fun to see what I was writing about. It's real. And then you can put some context into what an evacuation was like from that island, because we were stateside. So we helped coordinate the evacuation after the storm. And it wasn't until we moved to Jekyll that I finally said, okay, I'm going to write fiction. I've got the stories. I am going to take all the crazy I saw and have Tally sort of live through it. Now, it's interesting because the stories, there's five books in that series, the Gem of the Golden Isles series. And it starts with Escape to Jekyll Island. And it's about Tally launching her own company. She comes home thinking she's going to sit on her aunt's couch where she grew up, eat ice cream, play with her resume, and lick her wounds for 3 months.
Yeah.
And her aunt comes in and is like, get off your butt. There's no wedding planner on the island right now. So she launches her own company. She starts reconnecting with childhood friends, including a smoking hot state trooper that lives next door now. And things are starting to come. She's getting a life. Things are going well. And then strange things start happening. Flowers disappear right before a wedding. Vendors refusing to work with her. She doesn't get what's happening. And it turns out somebody had a grudge. Now, I'm not going to give away any more other than giant spoiler alert. She will survive book 1. There are 5 books. But every book, she's becoming a part of the police family. She's falling in love with and dating a guy who is in an established law enforcement family, generations. And that there actually tends to be a legacy in law enforcement. And being part of the police family is very different. You don't always celebrate your holidays on holidays. You have to watch your backs in different ways. And you worry more than you worry about a husband who's going to work at an executive job. You know?
Yeah.
And so that's addressed sort of through the arc of the whole series, because she starts out never having dated a cop and ends up deeply in love with one. It's quite its own adventure. Meantime, as I said, things go sideways. And in every book, there is a mystery suspense element. Somebody asked me if they're cozy mysteries. Not so cozy. Books 3 and 4 get a little ugly, but a little bit. See, this is where the problem of me being a subject matter expert in law enforcement, I covered George Floyd. I covered Ahmaud Arbery for weeks on end. And so I know a lot about all the stuff, and I find ways to write different things in. So, book 3 deals with one creepy aspect. In book 4, we've got human trafficking, which is actually a real problem at the ports in this region. Right. So I won Treasure on Jekyll, which is book 3, won an International Impact Book Award for mystery and suspense in women's fiction. And
that's brilliant.
Thank you. But really, the truth is that as you're reading these books, you just can't stop laughing, because she's going through her regular life as all this is happening. And her regular life is dealing with these insane brides and grooms. So there might be something horrible happening on the other side of the island. Meanwhile, she's trying to talk a bride off the ledge who's upset because it's not the right shade of pink sparkler that's arrived.
It sounds like such a strong concept for a series. Now, you've written 5 books. Is it an ongoing series or?
Well, okay. This is Escape to Jekyll Island, book 1.
Yeah.
And there's 5 books in this series. Now, there's a new series that I'm writing right now that should start coming out late summer, early fall. I keep getting busy. This is my problem. And this series is going to be Under the Oaks, which refers to St. Simon's, our sister island next door. And there's crossover in the series, because what happened is Tally, our main character, after 5 years, her employee Kayla has finally talked her into opening St. Simon's Weddings next door. So it's a new crossover series, features or focuses on different girls in the series, but it is sort of a continuation. But I also broke from what I've been writing and wrote a standalone novel that is going to hopefully be out this fall. To quote my people, dark family books do well in the fall.
Oh. There we go. You heard it here first. Take a note there.
It's called Thicker Than Blood. And it's about a patriarchal society family where money and influence are far more important than anything else. And but the story, it's fiction. But the aspects of it that apply to me, I guess, is that it talks about the whole story is told through the eyes of the women in the family, 3 generations of women in this family as they live through it. Because you can imagine what life is like in a patriarchal society family 100 years ago versus now. And so the book is told, or the story is told through the eyes of three generations of women in this family. And 2 of them have Alzheimer's towards the end. And that's where, the books are fiction. The aspects of dealing with Alzheimer's and losing somebody you love. Yeah, I was my mom's guardian and I'm her, only child. And so it was really terrifying and horrible. The whole experience is like the darkest time in my life. And I had lived through it with my grandmother had Alzheimer's, my great aunt had Alzheimer's. And I've been through it a few times. And see, I assumed that I would be taking care of my mom until she was in her 90s, like my grandma and my aunt. Actually, she died in November before her Alzheimer's had really progressed. She was in assisted living. I mean, she couldn't live by herself anymore. But she never didn't know who I was. She never made it to that stage of Alzheimer's, but she had a seizure, and it turned out she had a head full of brain tumors. And she died a week later. And blessing and a curse, I didn't get more time with her, but she never didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
And because she had Alzheimer's, she didn't know she was dying.
Oh, well, that's quite nice.
Yeah. You know what, though? That last week, I really would have liked to say goodbye.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to scare her. She didn't know she was dying. She wasn't in any pain. And then when the pain hit, she was medicated so much. When the pain hit, the pain was unbelievable. And then it was over. But it was the kind of thing that the story, the greater story in Thicker Than Blood is fiction. The experience with going through it, generations of Alzheimer's, that is a real story in it, And I think there's a lot of us, I'm in my 50s, early 50s. And I think there's a lot of us that are dealing with parenting the parents now.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
I was fortunate that my mom was able to be in assisted living. It's also a bummer. I would have had her come to my house, except for she had a series of UTIs that turned her into an absolute witch for a period of time. No, I mean, my husband was a cop, and we were investigated by Adult Protective Services in 2 states.
My God.
Oh my Lord, she got creative when she had a UTI. I mean, honestly, at one point, I believe she said I killed my stepdad, and he definitely died in hospice. So we were all functioning on different planes. And so what I did with Thicker Than Blood is I addressed going through that, what it feels like when it's coming for you and you've watched it for generations, and how do you prepare and what do you do?
Yeah, that's for a book, that's quite, I mean, for somebody who's got their start in writing romantic comedy, that's quite a dark and serious yet very important thing. I mean, that's Ernest Hemingway. We just mentioned the other day, the thing about writing fiction is you want to write something that's truer than fiction in some ways, so people can read it and it resonates with them. And they're like, I went through this and I'm getting validated by reading someone else going through this.
Yeah.
When the books that when you read them,
yeah,
I mean, the ones that plague your brain for a while, in a good or bad way, if they make you think afterwards, they got through to you. And it was very difficult to write, but it also felt important because it was, and I hate the expression like my truth. I'm not one of those people, but I haven't really been able to talk too much about the experience of losing my mom because it's just really hard.
Yeah.
My mom died the day before Thanksgiving, and I had a book come out on Black Friday 2 days later. And there was no way to stop the book launch because there were too many people involved and there was too much going on. And so I had to push everything down. And instead of falling apart and crying for a week, I wrote a book.
And that's
Yeah, I mean, the most powerful of the stories come from writing what you know, right? And because you can add so much accuracy, you can just put so much truth into it that that's what people connect with. And when you try to just make it up, you know, it's going to fall flat. It depends on what it is. Obviously, you make up a fantasy story, you make up science fiction, but your characters are often based on real people and doing those real things, and that's what brings a lot of that stuff to life.
I was talking to somebody about the new book and they asked me where I wrote it. And I said, it's a fiction story, but I made it take place in Washington, D.C. area and down here. And they said, why? I said, because I know these areas.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to write something about a place that I've never been, never seen, or I'm not familiar enough with to write about. I mean, we've all read those books and thought to ourselves, dude, you've never even been there.
Yeah.
And on Vieques and Jekyll, I got to be honest with you, that's like a pet peeve of residents. When you read reviews or you read things about your island that is so obvious that person has never been to your island. And,
So I used to live on an island in the Atlantic. I was a bartender in a hotel there, and you'd have these people, they come there and they'd be like, oh, we've been coming here every year for 5 years. And I'm like, oh, that means you've been here half as long as I have for the 10 weeks that I've worked here. Which is the thing, but it's a different life living on an island.
It is. And this Jekyll Island where we are now off the coast of Georgia is the closest to regular stateside real life. We're here and we have a causeway, whereas on Vieques you had to take an airplane or a ferry, and there were no boats or flights off the island after dark unless it was a medevac. Life here is just a causeway, a bridge, and a causeway away, and that's really neat. But it's still a bit of a microcosm in a good way. We are in our own little bubble here. Bad things happen all over the world. Pull up our little hoods. We're on Jekyll. But at the end of the day, we're a part of all of it. Living on an island is just a new thing. It's a different thing. It's a community also. There's just so often where, even on Jekyll, where you'll see a call go out for a medication or an oxygen tank or something on a community board, and the neighbors respond. Everybody takes care of each other because you have to.
Now, I was going to ask, going back to the writing process, you obviously have so much inspiration with all of these stories and all these characters and things. When you sat down to write, are you a plotter or a pantser? Do you plot things out, or do you just write by the seat of your pants?
I am a plotting pantser. Okay, so when I wrote this series, I actually came up with a story in the car on the way down to the inspection for this house. And the contract was accepted at 5:00 in the afternoon, and it's very hard to buy a house on Jekyll. There's only about 600 houses here, and many of them are never going on the market. It's middle of the night handshake type agreements. And so when the offer was accepted, and we hadn't even seen it. That's how hard it was.
Oh, wow. So you bought it sight unseen.
Yeah. Well, we'd seen the online, and my realtor had gone in with her phone and filmed it all. There was this storage shed in the backyard that I was curious about. It is a 2-story, 265 square foot guest house, actually. But it was called a storage shed on the realtor.com. So, yeah. There's a lot of background. I think they just didn't, the real estate company, somebody didn't want the house to sell. We got it. But we were driving down here, and my husband is snoring in the passenger seat, and I'm driving. And the story comes to mind, and I'm like, okay, wake up. I have to tell you this story. Her name's going to be Tally. And he's like, where did you come up with that? I was like, the house that we stayed in on Tallulah Fish Road. We're going to name her after Tallulah Fish is a historian, actually a famous historian here on the island. So we're name her after that. We're going to go with this. This is the story. And I told my husband, and he kept falling asleep on me. So I called a girlfriend who'd been a wedding planner with me, and I sussed it out on the phone with her so I wouldn't forget. And when we finally got to Georgia, it was the middle of the night. My husband dove into bed, and I sat down with a fresh pad of paper and outlined it. And the question was plotting or pantsing. And the answer is I do an outline, but it's not strict. I start because I believe I need an ending when I start. I need to know how it's going to end. Otherwise, you can end up with 3/4 of a
Mhm.
book, and so I outlined it that night, but I wouldn't let myself start writing because writing is a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
And I was still editor of Blue Lives Matter at the time. So I was working full time and getting ready to move. And I said, okay, you can work on the outline, but you cannot write the book until you are unpacked. Yeah, that never, I showed you guys the renovations earlier. You can understand. I still wouldn't have written anything if I really waited. But that is where I came up with it. Is Tally Davis loses her job, goes home, opens up her business, and everything happens for her in a way that rules out every story that I ever experienced, one thing after the other. Things are going wrong, things are going right, and there's a lot of lovable characters. It's very small town humor. And there's a lot of real people from this area that I wrote into the book for fun. I asked permission, obviously, before I used any real names or real businesses, and I didn't expect people to be excited to participate. Now people are like, can I be in your next book?
That's nice.
Yeah,
sure.
They feel like they're famous, you know.
So anyway, I write my outline, and then when I start writing, I look at the outline first, and then I start writing, and then I usually don't look at the outline again until I'm darn close to done, or I'm looking for something that I had an idea. I don't know how most people are with coming up with character names, but that's something that is hard for me because I for some reason in my head I keep coming back to the same darn names over and over again.
Oh,
so,
I do that.
Right. So when I'm outlining, which frequently takes place like in front of the television while hanging out with my husband or something like that, I'm playing with it on paper. If I think of cool names, I'll put them all in. So that's when I go back to the outline to see, did I catch everything? Did I put everything important in it? And then, I'll probably take a look at the outline before I declare the end. But I do not follow the outline. The outline is just to give me direction and help me figure out how's the book going to end.
And that's that. Yeah, I like that. Sounds about right. Coming up with a good ending is very, very important. But if you write really good characters, especially if they're based on real people, sometimes the characters are going to take you in places you didn't. You're like, why are you doing that? I'm writing the book. I'm in charge, and you're not behaving.
Yeah, but you don't want to write yourself into a corner and be at the end be like, I don't know how to end this, right? So
really, I mean that's my fear.
Towards a goal. Yeah, you want to work towards a goal, and how you get there along the way can change, but you still got to know the goal.
Sandy's mug says nobody puts baby in a corner.
you just want to lay those seeds, right? Otherwise, you do a lot of rewriting at the end.
I think that my first book, I'm not sure I knew exactly how I was going to end it. I mean, I knew how it was going to end, but the first book, I realized how important it was to understand the ending before I started writing the beginning. And that played well for me for that series. So I shall continue my plotting pantsing. And once I start writing, I write about 100 to 120 words a minute. And when I'm writing, I can write 8,000 to 10,000 words a day easily in fiction. Wow. It's just a matter of sitting down to do it and having the time, not distracted, sit down and do it.
Your husband's not in the same house when you're doing that, I take it. Because is he? Then he deserves a medal, a gold. Because I swear the biggest distraction to my writing is my wife.
Yeah.
My husband, he's a really good sport. And that's the best way I can put it. When he retired, he never got to retire because I turned his gun range bag into my bridal emergency bag because it had so many pockets. It was great. And
you'll have guns in there. Yeah. That could be a bridal emergency. You never know.
If you ever watch Wedding Island, we always played a game called Spot the Gun when you watch the TV show. Production was like, do you guys have to wear your guns? Because, you can see them when they're lifting up their arms to put up lights and stuff, and they're all strapped. And they asked, do they have to wear them? They're cops in Puerto Rico. Yeah, they do. We're not going to. There's a reason they're all wearing guns, and it's not because it's fun, It was such a cool experience. And then writing about all of it. The books are humorous and unbelievable, but totally relatable at the same time. Like, especially for anybody who's gone through a wedding with a bridezilla type or a nightmare wedding experience. If you've got kids getting married, it's the kind of stuff that just makes you laugh. When I was getting married, one of my friend's parents, actually a mom, told me, read Diary of a Mad Bride. I laughed so hard when I read that book. Oh my God, I laughed. I laughed so hard that my husband read it. And he's not even a big reader. He was just like, I've never heard you laugh so
Did
hard.
he
reading
enjoy
a
it?
book. Yeah. I mean, he was dying, but this is also a man who considers Bridget Jones' diary and that entire series to be opposition research. He says every guy should watch or read The Edge of Reason before getting married, because then you
Spoken like a true lobbyist.
Well, he said, do women really, when we have a fight, do you really gather all your friends and vote on how I'm going to be punished? I was like, basically, yeah, that's how it works.
So listen, do you have any like sort of tips for people that are writing this sort of thing where, you know, you have all this wealth of life experience and you know that you need to walk that line of what do you include and what don't you include, and you know, in terms of both being careful about offending people or getting into legal trouble about certain things you say, or on the other end of it, you know, you still want to make it exciting, and you know, or you don't want to maybe include too many details that are unimportant. I mean, there's a lot of picking and choosing that goes into it when you're using real life stories. And how do you make those decisions?
I think once I start writing, the story really kind of tells itself. Like, I've identified in my outline, and again, I'm pantsing once I start writing, but in my outline, I've probably identified 10 different weddings that would fall in the weddings from hell category that I'm going to write about somewhere in the story. And I don't always, we had this wedding that we called the big gay wedding. And it was, or the big neon gay wedding. God, we had so many, you know, crazy weddings over the years. And it's like you pick and choose what you want to use from each of those things as you go through. There's no rule. And you'll catch yourself being like, oh, that's not how it happened. And you have to be like, it doesn't matter how it happened. This is fiction. Nobody knows. You can make it up. You don't have to follow what actually happened. And it's an argument you have in your own head with yourself when you're writing. Like, can I do it? Yeah, I can do anything I want. Is it a good idea?
Yeah, of course. But you also you run the risk of losing authenticity if you change too much, right? Because the real life story of how things got there can make some sense, right? But once you have to start changing it, you might be like, no, does that really make sense? Why would they end up there? It's like when you watch a movie that's been heavily edited and then you watch, you know, the director's cut that had everything, and then it's like, so you watch that edited version and you're like, a lot of this doesn't make sense, or it's based on a book where they had to cut out so much of it, and you're like, I read the book so I understand what's going on, but this person next to me hasn't, and they're completely lost, right? So because you pull out too many things or too the important things, and that sometimes I think that's sort of the concern, is that, you know, you want to make sure you include the right things.
Yeah, I think you're very right about that. And also, when you're writing, you start a lot of different stories within your story. And you have to remember to finish all those little story loops.
Yes.
And actually got, I almost tripped on that last book because I was so grateful a proofreader at the very end was like, hey, whatever happened to Snoopy? Because I had written in something that really happened to me here on Jekyll. Somebody stole an inflatable Ohio State Snoopy out of the front yard during football season. And I wrote it into the book in a really funny way, but it was whatever happened to Snoopy. And, you know, it sounds like a silly, not important question, but you don't want readers asking that at the end of a book. Like, what happened? Just like, it's a series, but you can pick it up anywhere in the series and start reading. I am a voracious reader who traveled extensively. And the number of times that I have had to, in a little Puerto Rican hotel, for example, when I was lobbying for Puerto Rico, there's one book, it's book 3 in the series, it's in the hotel room, and it's your only option for something to read, unless you want to watch Spanish television. And so I believe very strongly that if you write a series, you need to write it in a manner that readers can pick it up anywhere and start reading.
Very, very good advice.
And I think my books are good for that. Yeah. But, you know, there's a lot of truth to my books, but a lot of fiction as well. And the goal was to talk about some of the funniest things I've ever seen, but not hurt people. I mean, there's no need to hurt anybody. And some people would be hurt. I mean, if you painted these people's names on them some of them would be really hurt. I'm sure nobody wants to be mocked.
People are only ever offended by things that are true, and so they might read it and recognize themselves in it, and then have uncomfortable feelings about themselves.
Yeah, I just, it's a kind of, I get a lot of messages from readers going, was such and such true? Is this true? Is that true? And I got one not long ago about book 4, and it said, this cannot be real. Did you really have a best man that was a dog that ate the wedding rings? Well, in the book, it's a miniature dachshund named Ralph.
Oh, I love Dachshunds. I'm totally in for. I'm gonna
Right,
have to get
but in real life, it was the engagement ring, and it was a Rottweiler.
Same thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it happened. We have an X-ray to prove it, but yes, it happened. It didn't happen exactly as I wrote it. And there's a lot of things that didn't happen exactly as I wrote them, and there are a lot of things that are so weird. There's only so much you can alter them. The Wiccan couple, when I write about that, like the things we saw that weekend, I know there's no fiction in writing that up. Like, wow, that was weird. But it went, I mean, so I had fun with it. I have a good time. I sit and giggle while I'm writing. And my hope is
nice.
My hope is that my readers, yes, they're following the suspense and what have you, but I also hope they're just laughing their butts off too, because anybody who makes it to adulthood in the United States and has been to a few weddings can imagine.
That's absolutely. And one of they always say either you make it spicy or you make it funny or you make it scary. Those are the, you have to have one of those things as a key ingredient for a book. I just looked at the time. We are running out of time, unfortunately. We could chat to you for hours. This would be a 4-hour long podcast otherwise. But very quickly, where can people find out more about your books and things? Because I want to learn about Ralph the Dachshund eating the wedding rings.
SandyMalone.com.
Yeah.
And my website's got everything, but there's also my books are on Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes and Noble, all the usual places. If you've got time, start with Escape to Jekyll Island, but it is the gem of the Golden Isle series, and wherever you pick it up in the series, you're going to be fine. Guaranteed to giggle.
Well, there we go. Guaranteed giggle. You heard it here first. Is that Sandy, it has been such a pleasure speaking to you. You are so wildly entertaining. I'm sorry that we don't have longer to keep on with it. But before we wrap things up, do you have any final advice for people about wanting to write their crazy lives into fictional novels?
Start writing.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice.
Just start writing. Don't set barriers for yourself. Don't do what I did and say, I'm not going to start until I've finished unpacking. I mean, for me, it's a little different. I was already writing professionally full time. It was just about fitting it into my schedule. But if you've got a story, sit down and write it and then see where you go from there. Don't talk about writing. Sit down and freaking write. That's
brilliant advice. I hope everyone listening takes that on board. Oh, well, Sandy, thank you so much for joining us. And yes, we will make sure to drop a link to Sandy's website down below in the description of this video or this podcast if you're listening on Spotify. So scroll down there, click on that, and go and check out her books. They sound absolutely hilarious. And while you're down there, there's that subscribe button if you haven't already. There is that like button. Give that a smash, as the kids say. And of course, there is that bell icon that you can click to get notified every time there is a new episode of Fully Booked. And of course, there will be an episode of Fully Booked next week. So we look forward to seeing you then. And thank you so much for joining us, Sandy.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun.